doctor.
Lang is her doctor. Y'all treat all your patients like this or just the black ones?
There was a personality patient for you. Last name is Jones. She's G3P2. I'm not sure when her due date is.
Her due date
I
is
just
the
said
10th.
it was the 10th.
I think her due date's the 10th.
She had 3 pregnancies, 2 babies at home. I bet y'all listen next time. When you found out you was delivering at this hospital, your ass should have changed doctors. Everybody say how they treat people here. Hello, TikTok family. This is a follow-up on the video that I posted earlier. So, I was at work. I had no idea of the activity that was going on. My daughter's texting me, calling me. I didn't know what was going on. So finally I get home, they tell me about the video, and a lot of you was asking about a follow-up and to explain the situation. So this is the situation. My daughter went into active labor at home. We took her to the hospital. She called ahead of time, so we know they are expecting us. However, we get there to the emergency room. We watching nurses, putting gloves on, running to the door. They get outside of the door, and I drive a black SUV, and they look at my vehicle, and one of the nurses come up to the window, and she goes, I'm sorry, this is for ambulance only. I said, well, my daughter is in active labor. And she was like, okay. She said, but you're going to have to go to the front. I'm like, I have to drive to the front. And they said, yeah, you have to drive to the front. Okay, another redhead. And so I'm like, so she's in the, you hear, and it was like, yeah, she started bagging up, hit the button, went back inside the building. So I go around to the front. I get out of the car. Again, this girl is in more pain now than she was when we first left the house. And she started saying, I feel pressure, I feel pressure. I said, take deep breaths. I ran in. I said, hey, my daughter's in the car. I went to emergency. They told me I had to come to the front. So the lady was like, what's your daughter's name? Told her Kiara Jones. She gets out some paperwork, started typing in the name. I was like, ma'am, do you have a wheelchair or anything? She's in the car. I need to get her in. Oh, if you check on the other side of those doors where the vending machine's at, there should be a wheelchair out there. There's no wheelchair out there. So she gets up, she walks in the back, and she come to the door with a wheelchair. She said, here you go, ma'am. I said, excuse me, you're not going to come with me? And she was like, no. Oh, okay. So, a police officer was in the lobby. He gets up. He grabbed a wheelchair. He goes out the door with me. He said, come on, I got you. Went out there. She is on hands and knees in the back of the vehicle. And I'm like, oh, shit, what is going on? And then she goes, it's in my ass. And I was like, what? And the guy was like, and she was like, he said, okay. She was like, give me a minute. She could not move. So when that contraction eased, we put her in a wheelchair. He said, you can go park your car, because they, again, had people out there. So I went park my car. It wasn't even 30 seconds. I run back in the building. She's just there with a stack of papers in her hand, screaming that this baby is coming. This baby is coming. I look at the registers behind the window, and they looking at me, and they was like, well, we can't do anything until she signed the papers. Are you fucking kidding me? So I grabbed the papers, and of course, they all lay ER bullshit that they have. And I was like, you want her to sign this and she's in active labor. And they was like, okay. I was like, ma'am, she was supposed to be induced earlier today at 8 o'clock. And they called and told her that they will call her because they didn't have beds. And they will let her know. And no one ever called back. They called back every hour on an hour. And they was like, no, we'll call you back. And then finally, her water break, she called them. They tell her to come in. So why is she signing these papers? We need her in labor and delivery. And it was like, ma'am, I'm sorry. So the charge nurse comes out. And she saw the paper signed. What fucking, are you serious right now? And she closes the door. And then the lady behind the window at this point, my daughter, scribbled her name on all the papers. We gave it to her. She says, thank you. She walked it around to the charge nurse. She opened up the door. My daughter is literally like having a contraction. And she's just standing there in the door. So we push her into the door. I said, can we get her into labor and delivery? She said, no, we have to fill out all this paperwork. I have to do the paperwork and get her a band before we can send her upstairs. So that was the video that you guys saw that I initially posted. So the next video that has no picture on it was when I was pushing her in and we was at the window because they asked me to move her from the window so they can take care of the guests or, patients that was coming in and out. Do not go to this hospital. This hospital is ghetto as hell. They do not care about black women or their babies. This is crazy. I read about stuff like this all the time. But to see this firsthand, this lady did not care. None of them. It wasn't until we got into labor and delivery where we saw an ounce of care or sympathy for her. Before then, they can care less. She did not care if she gave birth in that wheelchair. That was not her problem or her concern.
Just last year, there was a study showing that half of medical students believe that black people had inherent bodily differences. And the ones who believed in that thought that black people suffered pain less than whites. And there have been consistently studies showing that black people and white people are treated differently for pain. When you correct for status, education, disease, all kinds of factors, you still find that black people get inadequate pain treatment. In fact, if you go to certain neighborhoods, black and Hispanic neighborhoods, they're less likely to even carry Schedule II drugs. So we still don't believe that African Americans feel pain the way that whites do. Our behavior shows that. Which leads us to this gentleman, Dr. James Marion Sims. Who's heard of him? Well, I took this photograph of him. The statue is right across from the New York Academy of Medicine. And I took the photograph. A family came up and said, "Who is that?" And I explained to them who he was. They said, "Oh, he must be a great man. The inscription said, he treated slave and empress alike." I said, he treated them, but he did not treat them alike. Believe me. And as I explained who he was to the father, I saw the father's face darken. He began looking at me angrily. He couldn't have been that bad. It wouldn't have attached to him. I said, well, I'd like to think that, but here it is, And before my book was written, I could not convince this guy that Sims had been anything but a kind father of American gynecology, which actually is what I thought when I began researching him. I had believed that because that's what I'd been told. That's what we had all been told. But the interesting thing is, I first learned that he was someone different, not by reading other people's diatribes against him. I learned it by reading his own memoirs and the things he had done. I was completely shocked. What he had done was, he had bought or borrowed I think he had rented, actually not bought, a lot of slave women. And the number varied, but he had them locked in a shack on his property, which later on, years later, when he cleaned up his image, he called it a women's hospital. But it was actually a shack. So he had these women there, and why did he have them? He had them because he wanted to cure vesicovaginal fistula. Vesicovaginal fistula was a scourge of the South. And it affected more black women than white women, but it was the most horrible, horrible condition. It ruined the life of every woman who suffered from it. Essentially what would happen would be, without going into too much gory detail, which I still can't, even after 7 years, I can't bring myself to talk about this in detail, but basically the woman was left with openings between her rectum and her bladder, and she had all these openings that made her incontinent. Also constant pain, constant infection. She smelled.
Fuck! When's your due date?
Whatever you're doing right now, I need you to stop and watch this video.
Fuck! When's your due date?
Right now! So you don't have to be an OBGYN. You don't have to have any medical knowledge to know that this woman is in distress.
Is your due date 11?
For those primal screams, not to invoke an ounce of humanity. Think about that.
What? How many times have you been pregnant?
Seriously, who gives a fuck? A baby's coming.
3! This is your 3rd pregnancy?
Yes!
You have 2 babies
It's in my ass! 3rd baby, it's in my ass, means she's gonna have a baby on the floor unless she gets that woman to a room now.
You have 2 babies at home? Who's your doctor?
Lying is her doctor.
Let's talk about this Dallas video because it's not just bad behavior, it's dangerous, it's discriminatory, and it's why black women in this country keep dying. The young woman's in active labor, and clinically we all know that priorities shift. Intake stops, and your eyes should be on that mom and the baby. But instead, we're watching a nurse sit there asking frivolous questions while a black woman is clearly in distress, progressing, and not treated with the urgency and dignity that she deserves. It's not just rude, it's dangerous. It's egregious, and it's actually disgusting medical care. And I need y'all to understand something, that as a black OBGYN, this is not an isolated incident. This is a culture. And this is what happens when a healthcare system that is not designed for anyone outside the majority, this is how it affects and shapes the legacy and how black women are treated in real time. This is our maternal mortality numbers. This is how black women end up ignored, undiagnosed, untreated, and unprotected. It's a bias, it's systematic, and it's behavior like this that gets passed down, normalized, excused. This is a culture problem in Dallas, Texas probably as a whole. And a culture doesn't change with a press release. It changes with accountability, retraining, leadership, consequences, and a refusal to let people like this touch patients. So, in closing, black women deserve urgency, compassion, and clinical excellence. This ain't it. What we saw was unacceptable, and it's time that the healthcare system finally stops pretending that this doesn't happen. You need to do better.
I'm Dr. J. I'm an OBGYN. We are unicorns, okay? Black OBGYNs are a very small subset in the world of reproductive health care. In terms of how many black physicians that are out there, we only make up 5% of all active physicians within the United States. So we need to do better. If you really want to find a black OBGYN in your area, I always recommend first asking your friends and family. Maybe they might know someone. And then you can also talk to your primary care doctor to see if they have any referrals as well. Also, even though you're looking for an OBGYN, you might also want to see a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, or a midwife, family medicine doctors. There's lots of other healthcare professionals that can still take care of your reproductive health care. It doesn't necessarily have to be an OBGYN. And I will also share apps that can show you how you can possibly find black doctors. Best of luck on the journey. I hope you find the healthcare that you deserve.
Right now!
Is your due date 11? What? How many times have you been pregnant?
3!
This is your 3rd pregnancy?
Yes!
You have 2 babies
It's
at
in
home?
my ass!
You have 2 babies at home? Who's your doctor?
Lang is her doctor. Y'all treat all your patients like this or just the black ones?
Everyone's a personality patient for you. His last name is Jones. She's G3P2. I'm not sure when her due date is.
Her due date is the 10th.
This woman is in active labor, screaming for help. And the hospital staff is asking her paperwork questions instead of saving her and her baby. And her mother asked the question that black families know all too well. Y'all treat all patients like this or just the black ones? This isn't an isolated moment. This is America's maternal health crisis caught on camera. This video from a Mesquite, Texas hospital has exploded online. Over 26 million views because people can feel the neglect. That nurse's coldness, that delay in emergency care, that's not just bad bedside manner. It's a pattern, a deadly one. And black women have been screaming about it long before this went viral. Let me show you what the headlines don't. The numbers behind this moment. In 2023, black women made up 50.3 deaths per 100,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, huh? White women, 14.5. Hispanic, 12.4. Asian, 10.7. The gap is getting wider, not smaller. And it's not just about money or education. Black women, regardless of status, face more barriers and higher risk. Black mothers aren't dying because they're unhealthy. They're dying because they're unheard, dismissed, and left waiting. Doctors have been taught harmful myths, like black skin is thicker or black patients feel less pain. When you believe someone doesn't feel pain, you don't treat their emergency like an emergency. That's why over 70% of black women under 50 report being dismissed or ignored during medical visits. Not by accident, by design. Every mother deserves urgent, compassionate care. Not a questionnaire, not a wait, not a debate. If this video made you angry, good. Now let it move you. Black mothers deserve better. Black babies deserve better. And this conversation can't die just because the algorithm moved on.
Fuck! When's your due date?
Right now.
Is your due date?
Right now.
Is your due date? 11. What? How many times have you been pregnant?
So this video keeps going of a woman clearly in active labor about to have her baby, and the person checking her in just ignores her and keeps asking stupid questions. And as an OBGYN, I want to share my absolute rage at this. If you work in labor and delivery and you wonder why people go to TikTok for information, or maybe they don't want to come to the hospital to have their baby, it's because of things like that. And that holds even more so true for Black pregnant people in this country because their outcomes are so much worse. Now, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around this because nobody I ever work with would do that. But sadly, these places exist. So this is a call to those folks who work in healthcare to say, see, stop acting shocked when somebody doesn't trust you or looks to somebody else who doesn't even have a medical degree, because at least they feel seen and heard and taken care of. So we need to do a better job of being the safe space for people. And for Christ's sake, get the woman in a room and help her have her baby.